Hello, my name is Ryan Pereira, and I'm a 20-year-old student at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, studying journalism, public policy, and education. I was originally born in the United States, but both of my parents and my whole family are from the city of Cali, Colombia, in South America. You may have heard about Colombia for a variety of reasons. Maybe it's leading medical research, its incredible biodiversity, or notable celebrities like Sofia Vergara and Shakira. Like the United States, Colombia is a country with hundreds of stories that capture its history and culture, but there is not a single story that defines Colombia's full story. From the 1970s to the early 1980s, Colombia went through a series of presidential transitions that upset the traditional political system and created a weak political foundation for the country. During this time, rebel guerrilla groups such as the group M19 rose to power and started conflicts with the Colombian government that would last for decades. This period was also the start of Colombia's illegal drug trade, as powerful groups such as the Medellin cartel allied with guerrilla groups and committed acts like murdering public officials who opposed them. This was also the time where famous drug lords like Pablo Escobar rose to power, creating a legacy that would continue to dominate Colombia's story. Conflicts between these opposing groups created chaos during this period. In November of 1985, the M19 guerrilla group managed to storm the Colombian Palace of Justice and take Supreme Court magistrates hostage. This resulted in a violent shootout that claimed many lives and continued to create tension between these groups. The United States government eventually became involved, as the violence and illegal drug trade from cartel and guerrilla groups began to yield impacts for America. Throughout the 1990s, Colombian administrations continued to attempt negotiations with guerrilla and drug cartel groups, which became a lot easier after 1993, following Pablo Escobar's death. In 1991, the Colombian government created a new constitution with a series of legal and political reforms that included cooperation with M19 and other guerrilla groups. This marked a turning point in the country's history as it opened Colombia up to a period of economic and political growth and recovery. During this period of high crime and violence, the actions of groups like narcotics traffickers shaped the political, economic, and social development of Colombia. A major trafficking network was created that incorporated major cities in Cuba and the United States and turned Colombia into one of the key countries for the Western drug trade. This drug trafficking network also created political connections between countries like the United States that wanted to work together to eliminate cartels and crime groups. During this period, Colombia became a chief exporter of marijuana and cocaine. Cartels gained so much influence that their earnings eventually made up 5.5% of Colombia's GDP. The fiscal power held by these groups created chaos and violence throughout Colombia and weakened various sectors of the country's economy. Though the violence was always evident in Colombian communities during this time, most people did not realize the full societal impacts of this crime and drug trade until the late 1980s, when drug cartel networks permeated through Colombian communities and weak prison regulations allowed for captured traffickers to continue organized crime efforts. Thankfully, Colombia has been on a journey of political and economic recovery since the 1990s. In 1998, the election of President Andrés Pastrana saw increased collaboration with the United States government and peaceful negotiations with guerrilla and paramilitary groups. Government administrations since then have shifted to tackle other problems that plague the country, such as corruption, unemployment, and human rights violations. The country has seen a period of economic recovery since the early 2000s, thanks to the rise of key exports such as petroleum and coffee. Thanks to the rise of modern industries such as technology, tourism, and construction, Colombia's economy grew to be the third largest economy in South America as of 2013. Today, Colombia has the fastest growing major economy in the Western Hemisphere and is only behind China's economy globally. It has become a major player and is one of the most influential countries in Latin America and on a global scale. Colombia was one of the founding members of the Pacific Alliance and is a member of other multinational organizations like the United Nations. No doubt, Colombia has continued to grow as a thriving culture and society that will continue to play a key role in relations with North America and the rest of the world. At the same time, its dark history of crime and violence continue to plague the country's story, and many people around the world who are uninformed continue to view Colombia from a single perspective. Just like the United States has a much more complicated history than its mistakes like slavery or Japanese internment, Colombia's story goes so much more beyond rebel conflict and drug trafficking. In closing, I ask you to think about the single stories you have heard about other countries and think about how they may not accurately capture their whole story. How do certain stereotypes and perceptions, like the ones you may have had about Colombia, affect the views of people who are not familiar with them? I encourage you all to take time to learn more about other countries in Colombia because their stories can be pretty remarkable. Thank you for watching.